The Travels of Ibn Battuta, translated by Samuel Lee. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, go to LibriVox.org. The Travels of Ibn Battuta, Chapter 1. Tangiers, Tlemcen, Milyana, Algiers, Bijana, Cosentina, Buna, Tunis, Susa, Sajakas, Kabus, Tripoli, Meslata. In the name of the compassionate and merciful God, praise be ascribed to God, the Lord of the worlds, and the blessing of God be upon our Lord Muhammad, and upon all his posterity and companions. But to proceed, the poor and the needy of the forgiveness of his bountiful Lord, Muhammad ibn Fattah Allah al-Baluni states that the following is what he extracted from the epitome of the Khatib Muhammad ibn Jazi al-Kalbi, upon whom be the mercy of God, from the travels of the theologian Abu Abd Allah Muhammad ibn Abd Allah al-Lawati of Tangiers, known by the surname of Ibn Battuta, and that he did not extract anything except what he believed was strange and unknown, or known by report, not to be believed on account of its rarity, and the frequent carelessness of historians in delivering down what has been reported, but what he himself considered as true, in consequence of the fidelity of the traveler, and because he had written down what he believed to be credible from histories of various nations and countries, and because that which has been reported by faithful witnesses generally receives credit and excites inquiry. Some of his statements, indeed, are opposed to the statements of others, as for instance, his account of what he saw in the aromatic roots of Hindustan, which differ from those given by the physicians, and yet his accounts are probably the true ones. The Sheikh Ibn Battuta, the author of these travels, left his native city Tangiers for the purpose of performing the pilgrimage in the 725th year of the Hijra, AD 1324 to 1325. I shall mention here only the names of some of the districts through which he passed, although this may contribute but little towards impressing the reader with the greatness of his courage, his religious confidence, or his indefatigable perseverance in overcoming the difficulties of passing deserts and of crossing mountains. The first city, therefore, at which he arrived was Tlemcen, and the next Milyana, and the next Algiers, and the next Bijana, and the next Cosentina, and the next Buna, and the next Tunis, and the next Sawasa, and the next Safakus. Ibn Jazi al-Kalbi states that on this place the following verses were written by Ibn Habib el-Tanuki. May showers enrich thy happy soil, fair land, where fanes and towers arise. On thee let sainted pilgrims pour the richest blessings of the skies. The wave that round thy bosom plays, conscious of its endearing retreat, when rude tempest rocks thy domes, in sighs resigns its happy seat. Yet urged another glance to steal, of thy loved form so good, so fair, flies to avoid the painful view of rival lovers basking thence. And on the other hand, Abu Abd Allah Muhammad ibn Abi Tamin has said, see the swelling angry tide, rage and beat against her side, but only ask a moment's stay. It hisses, foams, and rolls away. The next city was that of Kabus, the next Tripoli. Ibn Battuta has stated that he passed on to Meslata and Mezurata, and the Kasra Surt, or the palaces of Surt. We then passed, says he, the low grounds, which may also mean the forest, and proceeded to the palace of Barsis the devotee, to the Kabat al-Islam, and to the city of Alexandria, where we saw one of the most learned men, the judge Fakir Odin el-Riki, whose grandfather is said to have been an inhabitant of Rika. This man was exceedingly assiduous in acquiring learning. He traveled to Hejaz, and thence to Alexandria, where he arrived in the evening of the day. He was rather poor, and he would not enter the city until he had witnessed some favorable omen. He sat accordingly near the gate until all the persons had gone in, and it was nearly time for closing the gate. The keeper of the gate was irritated at his delay, and said to him ironically, "Enter, Mr. Judge." He replied, "Yes, Judge, if that be God's will." After this, he entered one of the colleges, and attended to reading, following the example of others who had attended to eminence, until his name and reputation for modesty and religion reached the ears of the king of Egypt. About this time the judge of Alexandria died. The number of learned men in Alexandria who expected this appointment was large, But of these, the sheik was the only one who entertained no expectations of it. The Sultan, however, sent it to him, and he was admitted to the office, which he filled with great integrity and moderation, and hence obtained great fame. Chapter 2. Alexandria, Taruja, Almanhur, Fawa, Fariskur, Ashman al-Roman, Samanud, Cairo. One of the great saints in Alexandria at this time was the learned and pious Imam Borhan Odin el-Araj, a man who had the power of working miracles. I one day went to him when he said, "I perceive that you are fond of traveling into various countries." I said yes, although I had at that time no intention of traveling into very distant parts. He replied, "You must visit my brother Farid Odin in India, and my brother Roku Odin ibn Zachariah in Sindhia, and also my brother Borhan Odin in China. And, when you see them, present my compliments to them." I was astonished with what he said, and determined myself to visit these countries. Nor did I give up my purpose till I'd met all three mentioned by him, and presented his compliments to them. Another singular man was Sheikh Yakut the Abyssinian, disciple of the Sheikh Abu Abbas el-Mursi. This Abu Abbas was the disciple of the servant of God, Abu el-Hasan el-Shadali, the author of the Hizb el-Bahr, famous for his piety and miracles. I was told by the Sheikh Yakut from his preceptor Abu al-Abbas al-Mursi that the Sheikh Abu al-Hasan al-Shadali performed the pilgrimage annually, making his way through Upper Egypt and passing over to Mecca in the month of Rajab, and so remaining there till the conclusion of the pilgrimage. That he visited the Holy Tomb and returned by the Great Passage to his city. On one of these occasions, and which happened to be the last, he said to his servant, "Get together an axe, a casket, and some spice, and whatever is necessary for the interment of a dead body." The servant replied, "And why, sir, should I do this?" He rejoined, "You shall see Homaitara." Now, Homaitara is situated in Upper Egypt. It is a stage of the great desert of Idhab, in which there is a well of very pernicious and poisonous water. When he had got to Homaitara, the sheikh bathed himself, and had performed 2 of the prostrations of his prayers, when he died. He was then buried there. Ibn Battuta states that he visited the tomb and saw upon it an inscription tracing his pedigree up to Hussein, the son of Ali. I heard, continues the traveler, in Alexandria by the Sheikh el-Salih el-Abid el-Munfiq, of the character of Abu Abd Allah el-Murshidi, and that he was one of the great interpreting saints, secluded in Minyats of Ibn Murshid, and that he had there a cell, but was without either servant or companion. Here he was visited daily by emirs, viziers, and crowds of other people, whose principal object it was to eat with him. He accordingly gave them food, such as they severally wished to have, of victuals, fruits, or sweetmeats, a circumstance which has seldom taken place in any days but his. To him also do the learned come for patents of office or dismissal. These were his constant and well-known practices. The Sultan of Egypt too, el-Malik el-Nazir, often visited him in his cell. I then left Alexandria, says the traveler, with the intention of visiting this sheik, may God bless him, and got to the village of Taruja, then to the city of Damanhur, the metropolis of the Delta, then to Fawa, not far from which is the cell of Sheikh Abu Abd Allah el-Murshidi. I went to it and entered when the sheik arose and embraced me. He then brought out victuals and ate with me. After this I slept upon the roof of his cell, and saw in a dream the same night myself placed on the wings of a great bird, which fled away with me towards the temple at Mecca. He then verged towards Yemen, then towards the east. He then took his course to the south. After this he went far away into the east, and alighted with me safely in the regions of darkness, or the Arctic regions, where he left me. I was astonished at this vision, and said to myself, no doubt the sheik will interpret it for me, for he said to do things of this sort. When the morning had arrived, and I was about to perform my devotions, the sheik made me officiate. After this, his usual visitors, consisting of emirs, viziers, and others, made their calls upon him, and took their leave, after each had received a small cake from him. When the prayer at noon was over, he called me. I then told him my dream, and he interpreted it for me. He said, "You will perform the pilgrimage, and visit the tomb of the Prophet. You will then traverse the countries of Yemen, Iraq, Turkey, and India, and will remain in these some time. In India you will meet my brother Dilshad, who will save you from a calamity in which you will happen to fall." He then provided me with some dried cakes and some dirhams, and I bade him farewell. Ever since I left him, I experienced nothing but good fortune in my travels, but never met with a person like him, except my lord El-Wali Muhammad El-Mawala in India. I next came to the city of Narait, and then Al-Mahala El-Kobra, or the Great Station. From this I went to Al-Barlas, then to Damietta, from which is the cell of Sheikh Jamal Odin El-Sawi, the leader of a sect called the Kurenders. These are they who shave their chins and their eyebrows. It is said that the reason which induced the sheikh to shave off his beard and his eyebrows was the following. He was a well-made and handsome man, and one of the women of Sawa consequently fell in love with him. After this, she was constantly sending to the sheikh, presenting herself to him in the street, and otherwise soliciting his society. This he completely resisted. When she was tired of this, she suborned an old woman to stop him on his way to the mosque, with a sealed letter in her hand. When the sheikh passed by her, she said, "Good sir, can you read?" "Yes," he replied. She said, "This letter has been sent to me by my son. I wish you would read it for me." He answered, "I will." But when she had opened the letter, she said, "Good sir, my son has a wife who is in yonder house. Could I beg the favor of your reading the letter at the door, so that she may hear?" To this he also assented. But when he had got through the first door, the old woman closed it, and out came the woman with her slaves, and hung about him. They then took him into an inner apartment. The mistress began to take liberties with him. When the sheikh saw that there was no escaping, he said, "I will do what you like, show me a sleeping room." This she did. He then took in with him some water and a razor which he had, and shaved off his beard and both his eyebrows. He then presented himself to the woman, who, detesting both his person and his deed, ordered him to be driven out of the house. Thus, by divine providence, was his chastity preserved. This appearance he retained ever after, and everyone who embraced his opinions also submitted to the shaving off of his beard and both of his eyebrows. It is also said of the Sheikh Jamal Odin that after he had gone through Damietta, he consistently attended the burial grounds of that place. There was at that time in Damietta a judge known by the name of Ibn Umayyad, who, attending one day at the funerals of one of the nobles, saw the sheikh in the burial ground, and said to him, "You are a beastly old fellow." He replied, "And you are a foolish judge, who can pass with your beast amongst the tombs, and know at the same time that the respect due to a dead man is just as great as that due to a living one." The judge replied, "Worse than this is the shaving off of your beard." The sheikh said, "Mark me," and then he rubbed a little alcohol on his eyebrows, and lifted up his head, presenting a great black beard, which very much astonished the judge and those with him, so that the judge descended from his mule. The sheikh applied the alcohol the second time, and lifting up his head exhibited a beautiful white beard. He then applied the alcohol a third time, and, when he lifted up his head, his face was as beardless as before. The judge then kissed his hand and became his disciple, and building a handsome cell for him, became his companion for the rest of his life. After a while the sheikh died and was buried in his cell, and when the judge died he was buried, as it had been expressed in his will, in the doorway of the cell, so that everyone who should visit the tomb of the sheikh would have to pass over his grave. I then proceeded from this place to the city of Fariskor, then to Ashmun al-Roman, and then to the city of Samanud, then to Cairo, the principal city of its district. The Nile, which runs through this country, excels all other rivers in the sweetness of its taste, the extent of its progress, and the greatness of the benefits it confers. It is one of the 5 great rivers of the world, which are itself the Euphrates, the Tigris, the Shahun, and the Jaihan, or the Gihon. 5 other rivers too may be compared with them, namely, the river of Sindhia, which is called the Punjab, or 5 waters, the river of India, which is called the Gung, or the Ganges, to which the Indians perform their pilgrimage, and into which they throw the ashes of their dead when burnt. They say it descends from paradise. Also the river Jun, or Jumna, the river Athil, or Volga, and the desert of Kifchak, and the river of Sarv in Tartary, upon the bank of which is the city of Khanbalik, and which flows from that place to El-Kansa, and thence to the city of Zaitun in China, of which we shall give accounts in their proper places. The course of the Nile, moreover, is in a direction from the south to the north, contrary to that of all other rivers. When I entered Egypt, the reigning prince was El-Malik el-Nasir Muhammad ibn El-Malik el-Mansur Kalawan. The learned men then in Egypt were Shams Odin Isfahani, the first man in the world in metaphysics, Rukn Odin ibn el-Qariya, one of the first leaders in the same science, and the Sheikh Athir Odin al-Buhaynan of Granada, the greatest grammarian.
End of chapter 1 and 2.